In the autumn of 1831, a peculiar event took place in the bustling town of Milford, situated on the outskirts of London, which would soon captivate the imaginations of locals and scholars alike. The town, known for its thriving textile mills and growing population, was alive with the hum of industry and the clatter of horse-drawn carriages along cobblestone streets. Yet amidst this ordinary backdrop, a child was born under extraordinary circumstances, one whose cries seemed inexplicably bound to the very heartbeat of the town's most cherished timekeeper, the clock tower. The infant, a boy named Samuel, was the subject of numerous diary entries penned by Thomas Ellery, Milford's respected clockmaker. Thomas, a meticulous man in his late 40s, had dedicated his life to the maintenance and perfection of the town's clock tower, a proud symbol of order and progress erected during the previous decade. His journals offer a detailed, haunting account of the unusual connection between Samuel's cries and the clock's operation, laying the foundation for a mystery that would both intrigue and unsettle the community. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. From the moment Samuel entered the world in early September, his parents, Margaret and William Hargrove, noticed something uncanny. Unlike other infants, Samuel did not cry out of hunger, discomfort, or the usual distress of newborn life. Instead, his sobs were triggered exclusively by one singular event. The moment the clock tower ceased its steady chime, it was as if the child's own rhythm was entwined with the mechanical pulse of the great timepiece. Thomas Ellery's earliest observation of this phenomenon occurred on September 19th. On that day, a sudden mechanical failure caused the clock to halt its chimes for a brief interval. At precisely the same moment, Samuel's wails pierced the air from the Hargrove household, adjacent to the town square. Thomas, who was called to repair the clock, was drawn to the coincidence. His journal entry from that evening reads, "The infant's cries began only as the great hands of the clock stood still. I had never before heard a sound so haunting, nor so precisely timed. It was as if the boy's very breath depended upon the mechanism's motion." Eyewitness accounts corroborate Thomas's observations. Mrs. Abigail Fenwick, a seamstress who worked nearby, recalled the day vividly in a letter preserved in the town's archives. "The child cried not for hunger or cold, but as the clock fell silent. It was a strange sound, almost mournful, that seemed to echo the absence of the bell's familiar toll." Likewise, young apprentice Samuel Griggs noted the eerie synchronicity during his daily errands, remarking that the boy's cries came as if the clock's stillness had awakened some deep unrest within him. The clock tower itself occupied a central place in Milford's collective life. Constructed in 1825, it was a marvel of industrial ingenuity and civic pride, its four faces visible from every quarter of the town. More than a mere timekeeper, it was a symbol of discipline and progress, marking the rhythms of work and rest, of commerce and community. Its steady chimes were woven into the fabric of daily existence, a comforting presence amid the uncertainties of a rapidly changing world. Against this backdrop, Samuel's cries took on a significance beyond the personal. Locals began to whisper that the boy was somehow attuned to the very essence of time itself, a living barometer of the clock's health and, by extension, the town's fortune. Some older residents, steeped in superstition, speculated that the child was a harbinger, a portent of disorder when the clock faltered. Others, more skeptical, dismissed the connection as coincidence or the natural cries of an infant responding to ambient sounds. What set Samuel apart, however, was the absolute exclusivity of his reaction. At no other time did he cry, only when the clock stopped. This infrequent occurrence, often the result of mechanical failure or storm-induced damage, transformed quiet moments into episodes of eerie resonance. During one such event, the clock ceased at the stroke of noon for nearly 10 minutes, and Samuel's cries escalated from soft whimpers to piercing wails that seemed to fill the streets, drawing concerned neighbors to his family's door. Thomas Ellery's fascination deepened with each such incident. As the town's clockmaker, he was intimately familiar with the clock's mechanisms, the escapement, the gears, the weights, all designed to ensure relentless precision. Yet he could find no mechanical explanation for the boy's cries, nor could he deny the chilling synchronicity. His diaries reveal a growing obsession with the phenomenon, blending empirical notes with reflections on fate and the nature of time itself. In one particularly detailed entry dated October 3rd, Thomas wrote, "I have come to regard Master Samuel's cries not merely as sound, but as a signal, an inexplicable bond between human life and the machinery of time. Could it be that the boy perceives some hidden irregularity, some temporal disturbance that escapes even the finest instruments? Or is this but a cruel trick of coincidence, amplified by the imagination of a town watching too closely?" The narrative of Samuel's strange cries began to circulate beyond Milford. Letters sent to nearby towns and even to London described the infant's peculiar condition, attracting the attention of early scientific minds, intrigued by the intersection of human physiology and mechanized timekeeping. Yet no definitive explanation emerged, only growing curiosity and a sense of eerie wonder. Margaret and William Hargrove found themselves caught between pride and despair. They marveled at the uniqueness of their son, but struggled with the isolation his condition imposed. Samuel's cries disrupted the household's peace and strained social relations, as neighbors viewed the family with a mixture of sympathy and suspicion. The Hargroves kept detailed records of the clock's stoppages and Samuel's responses, hoping to find a pattern or a cure, but the mystery deepened. The autumn months saw several incidents where storms battered Milford, causing power outages and mechanical failures in the clock tower. Each time, the clock's silence was met with Samuel's wailing, a haunting chorus that seemed to mourn the loss of the measured hours. Townspeople began to gather near the clock tower during these events, watching the child's cries and the clock's stillness as twin markers of uncertainty. Thus, the opening chapter of this strange tale is recorded in the private journals of Thomas Ellery, enriched by first-hand testimonies and the poignant letters of those who witnessed the boy's cries in tandem with the clock's halts. The story begins not with answers, but with questions about the nature of time, the connection between human life and mechanized order, and the mysteries that lie hidden in the ticking of a town's most treasured clock. In the quiet, fading light of that autumn, as Milford's clock hands moved inexorably forward, a child cried out, not for comfort, not for care, but in response to the silence where time itself should have spoken. This uneasy harmony between infant and mechanism would soon draw the attention of scholars and officials alike, setting the stage for a mystery that challenged the very fabric of technological progress and human experience. Milford, in 1831, was a town perched on the cusp of change, emblematic of England's broader industrial transformation, yet still clinging to vestiges of a world shaped by tradition and superstition. To understand the enigmatic connection between Samuel's cries and the clock tower's halts, one must consider the historical and cultural landscape that framed this peculiar phenomenon. At the heart of Milford's identity was its rapid industrial growth. The town had blossomed over the preceding 2 decades into a thriving center for textile manufacturing, its factories belching smoke into the sky, and its streets teeming with laborers, merchants, and inventors. Steam engines powered the mills, and mechanized looms wove patterns faster than human hands ever could. This surge of innovation brought prosperity, but also disruption, upending old ways and unsettling the rhythms of daily life. Central to this new order was the clock tower, erected in 1825 to symbolize progress and discipline. Its towering presence was more than architectural grandeur. It was the town's temporal anchor. The clock regulated the factory whistles that signaled the start and end of shifts, the market hours, and the daily routines of thousands. In an era when personal timepieces were luxuries few could afford, the clock tower's chimes were a shared heartbeat, binding Milford's inhabitants into a collective cadence. This collective reliance on the clock fostered a near-sacred reverence for timekeeping. Punctuality was prized as a virtue and a necessity, especially among mill owners and overseers who viewed the clock as a guarantor of efficiency and profit. Any disruption to its precise operation was more than an inconvenience. It threatened the delicate balance of industry and social order. Yet alongside this mechanized modernity, Milford remained a town steeped in superstition and folk belief. Many residents, particularly the older generation and rural migrants who had come seeking work, clung to traditions inherited from a pre-industrial past. Time was not merely measured in minutes and hours, but imbued with spiritual significance. The clock tower's chimes, for some, echoed the voice of fate itself, marking auspicious moments or warning of misfortune. Local lore held that when the clock stopped, it was a sign that the natural order had been disturbed. Stories circulated of past incidents, brief yet ominous stoppages, followed by accidents, illnesses, or unexplained events. This cultural backdrop amplified the community's reaction to Samuel's cries, which seemed to embody the town's collective anxiety over time's fragility. Margaret Hargrove, Samuel's mother, was acutely aware of these tensions. As a woman raised in a rural village, she carried both the practical sensibilities of a working-class mother and the deep-rooted beliefs of folk tradition. In her own words recorded in letters to a sister, she described the clock tower as the great heart of Milford, whose beating is both a blessing and a curse. For Margaret, Samuel's cries were not just a medical mystery, but a spiritual enigma, a child somehow bound to the town's fate. Thomas Ellery, the town's clockmaker, found himself navigating these competing worldviews. His training was steeped in mechanics and precision, yet even he could not ignore the almost metaphysical implications of his observations. The clock tower was a marvel of engineering, but it was also a symbol, a tangible representation of humanity's attempt to master time. The boy's cries, synchronized with the clock's failures, suggested a connection that transcended mere mechanics. Milford's social fabric was further complicated by the pressures of industrialization. The town's population had swelled as workers arrived from countryside villages, seeking livelihoods in the factories. This demographic shift brought a mix of cultures, beliefs, and economic struggles. The clock tower's chimes marked not only time, but also the social hierarchies and tensions within Milford. Mill owners and managers relied on the clock to enforce discipline, while laborers often viewed the relentless pacing as a source of strain and alienation. In this context, the clock tower was more than a timekeeper. It was a locus of power and control. Its uninterrupted chimes reinforced the industrial regime, while any stoppage symbolized a fracture in that regime's authority. Samuel's cries, appearing at these moments, were interpreted by some as a challenge to the established order, a living reminder of the vulnerabilities beneath the town's surface. The town square, where the clock tower stood, was also a center of communal life. Markets, festivals, and public gatherings all revolved around the rhythms set by the clock. Its hands guided not only work hours, but social interactions, from church services to school recesses. The clock's voice was woven into the fabric of Milford's collective identity, making its sudden silences all the more disquieting. During autumn evenings, as the air grew chill and the factory's whistle signaled the end of the workday, the clock's chimes echoed across the streets and alleys. Residents paused their routines to listen, finding comfort in the steady cadence. When the clock faltered, that comfort was shattered, replaced by unease. Samuel's cries became a focal point for this unease, a sound that both mirrored and magnified the town's fears. Local newspapers began to report on the phenomenon, blending factual accounts with speculative commentary. The Milford Gazette described Samuel as a child of time itself, while other periodicals hinted at supernatural explanations, invoking folklore about time spirits and omens. This mix of science and superstition reflected the era's tension between Enlightenment rationalism and enduring traditional beliefs. The town's artisans and inventors, meanwhile, saw the clock tower as a challenge to be mastered. Workshops buzzed with experiments to improve the clock's reliability, from refining gears to insulating the mechanism against weather-induced failures. Thomas Ellery was at the forefront of these efforts, driven not only by professional pride, but by a personal determination to protect the boy from distress. Yet despite these efforts, the clock's stoppages persisted, often triggered by storms or unforeseen mechanical faults. Each failure was accompanied by Samuel's unmistakable cries, reinforcing the perception that the child and the clock were bound in an unfathomable bond. This intertwined fate became a subject of whispered conversations in taverns, homes, and factories, where the clock's silence was feared as a harbinger of disorder. The interplay of industrial progress and lingering superstition created a unique cultural milieu in which Samuel's condition was both a scientific curiosity and a spiritual riddle. It exposed the fragile interface between human innovation and the mysteries of existence, revealing how deeply time was embedded in the town's consciousness. As autumn deepened, the town's leaders found themselves grappling with these complexities. The clock tower was a public asset, its uninterrupted function critical to Milford's economic and social stability. At the same time, the growing attention to Samuel's cries stirred unease among merchants and officials concerned about public perception and order. Within this charged atmosphere, the significance of the clock tower extended beyond its physical structure. It symbolized the tension between the old and the new, the mechanical and the human, the measurable and the mystical. Samuel's cries, echoing only when the clock stopped, became a haunting refrain in this evolving narrative, a reminder that beneath the polished surfaces of progress lay questions that time itself had yet to answer. Thus, the stage was set. A town caught between eras, a clock tower embodying both hope and anxiety, and a child whose cries would challenge Milford's understanding of time, technology, and the unseen forces that shape human life. Thomas Ellery's initial encounter with Samuel's cries had sparked a growing fascination tinged with unease. As autumn deepened, Thomas began to observe the child with increasing scrutiny, noting patterns that defied ordinary explanation. His role as Milford's clockmaker brought him into close contact with the clock tower's intricate workings. But it was his daily visits to the Hargrove household that revealed a connection between the boy's behavior and the town's mechanical heartbeat that was both unsettling and profound. The first striking observation came on the evening of September 27th. A sudden storm swept through Milford, its fierce winds and driving rain battering the clock tower and causing its mechanism to falter. As the great bell's chimes ceased abruptly, Thomas heard the unmistakable wails of Samuel cutting through the storm's roar. Arriving at the Hargrove home, he found the child in the midst of a prolonged, haunting cry that seemed to echo the rhythm of the clock's ticking before its failure. Thomas's diary from that night details his observations. The boy's cries commenced precisely as the clock stilled, rising and falling with a cadence that resembled the halted ticking itself. Attempts to soothe him were met with no success. He seemed bound to this unnatural moment by some invisible tether. This entry marked the beginning of Thomas's systematic study of Samuel's reactions, as he sought to document the mysterious bond between infant and mechanism. Over the following weeks, Thomas meticulously recorded each instance when the clock stopped and Samuel's cries began. He noted variations in the intensity and duration of the cries, which often correlated with the length of the clock's silence. Short stoppages elicited brief, almost mournful whimpers, while longer failures brought forth piercing, rhythmic wails that unsettled all who heard them. Intriguingly, the cries themselves exhibited a musical quality, oscillating in pitch and tempo as if mirroring the clock's interrupted rhythm. The townsfolk quickly became attuned to this phenomenon. Neighbors reported that the boy's crying was unlike any other infant's, haunting, almost hypnotic, and imbued with a sense of urgency. Mrs. Fenwick, the seamstress, wrote in her journal, "Samuel's cries are not mere distress, but a lamentation, a sound that speaks of something lost when the clock falls silent." Others described the cries as eerily rhythmic, sometimes resembling a heartbeat or the ticking of a watch. Attempts to console Samuel during these episodes proved futile. His mother, Margaret, recounted in her letters how the child's eyes would widen as the clock stopped, fixating on some unseen point, his cries growing louder and more insistent. "No rocking or lullaby could quell him," she wrote, as if the very cessation of the clock's voice caused a pain deeper than any physical discomfort. These descriptions painted a portrait of a boy whose distress was not physical, but perhaps existential, a response to the absence of time's familiar cadence. Thomas's growing intrigue led him to experiment with the conditions surrounding the clock's operation. He began to monitor the clock tower closely, noting environmental factors such as temperature, humidity, and atmospheric pressure that might influence both the mechanism and the child's behavior. Yet no direct causation emerged. The clock's failures were often unpredictable, triggered by mechanical wear or weather, and Samuel's cries followed with uncanny precision, as if the child was both witness and participant in the clock's faltering. One particularly perplexing incident occurred on October 10th during a calm afternoon. The clock unexpectedly ceased its chiming for nearly 15 minutes without any external disturbance. Samuel's cries erupted immediately, rising in intensity before gradually subsiding as the clock resumed. Thomas observed that the boy's vocalizations during this episode bore a striking resemblance to the pattern of the clock's chimes, almost as if he was echoing the lost melody. This mimicry suggested a deeper cognitive process at work, hinting that Samuel's cries were not mere reactions, but a form of communication or expression tied to the clock's function. Such observations stirred debate among the townsfolk. Some viewed Samuel's behavior as a miracle or a curse, while others feared it portended calamity. Rumors spread that the child was in some way connected to the town's fate, a living embodiment of time's fragility. These sentiments were amplified by the clock's central role in Milford's industrial life. Every failure disrupted the mills and markets, and every cry from Samuel during these moments was a reminder of the precarious balance between human endeavor and the forces beyond control. Despite the growing public fascination, scientific understanding remained elusive. The infant's cries were not solely auditory phenomena, but appeared to be linked to the clock's mechanical state in a manner that defied conventional explanation. Thomas consulted with local physicians, but no medical cause for Samuel's selective crying was identified. The boy's physical health was robust. His cries were not symptomatic of illness or distress in the usual sense, but seemed uniquely tethered to the clock's operation. The intricate relationship between Samuel's cries and the clock's failures invited speculation on whether the child's vocalizations influenced the mechanism in turn. Some townspeople whispered that his cries might cause the clock to falter, a superstition that Thomas was quick to dismiss, but which nonetheless gained traction. Others pondered if Samuel was somehow sensing time itself, a force imperceptible to instruments, but palpable to the human spirit in extraordinary circumstances. Observers noted that Samuel's cries often carried a rhythmic quality reminiscent of the clock's ticking, leading to theories involving sound frequencies and resonance. The possibility that the child's vocalizations interacted with the clock's delicate gears and escapement was proposed, though no empirical evidence supported this. Nevertheless, the notion of a feedback loop between infant and machine captured imaginations and added layers of complexity to the mystery. Thomas's own reflections reveal an internal struggle between empirical reasoning and the profound strangeness of the phenomena. In a journal entry dated October 15th, he mused, "I seek mechanical fault in the clock and physiological cause in the child, yet find only a riddle where logic should reside. The boy's cries are a language I cannot decipher, spoken in tandem with the silence of the clock, a silence that should not exist." His words encapsulate the tension between scientific inquiry and the inexplicable that permeated Milford. Meanwhile, Margaret Hargrove endeavored to shield her son from the distress caused by these episodes. She kept detailed logs correlating the clock's stoppages with Samuel's cries, hoping to predict and perhaps prevent future occurrences. Yet the unpredictability of both the clock's failures and the child's reactions rendered such efforts largely futile. The family's routine became punctuated by moments of sudden, piercing cries that echoed through their modest home and beyond. The community's response was mixed. Some expressed sympathy and support, while others regarded the family with unease, viewing Samuel's condition as an ill omen. The child's cries became a subject of whispered speculation in marketplaces and taverns, where tales of the boy who cried only when the clock stopped grew in detail and fervor. These stories, passed from person to person, fed into the town's collective anxiety about the fragility of time and order. In the days that followed, Thomas and Margaret coordinated their observations, sharing notes and insights. Their collaboration underscored the intersection of mechanical precision and human experience embodied in the phenomenon. Each clock failure was no longer a mere technical fault, but an event laden with emotional and symbolic weight, marked by the boy's plaintive cries. Thus, the pattern of observation and odd behavior coalesced into a defining feature of Milford's autumn. The cries of a single infant synchronized with the halting of a great mechanical heart, transformed the town's perception of time from an abstract measure into a lived, almost sentient experience. In this delicate balance between machine and child, between sound and silence, the mystery deepened, beckoning both wonder and fear as the seasons turned. Following weeks of careful observation, Thomas Ellery resolved to investigate the clock tower's mechanical workings with renewed rigor, determined to uncover any fault that might explain the clock's sudden halts and their curious correlation with Samuel's cries. His reputation as Milford's skilled clockmaker lent weight to his inquiries, yet even Thomas approached this investigation with a sense of trepidation, aware that the phenomenon defied ordinary explanation. Thomas began by conducting exhaustive inspections of the clock's internal mechanisms. The tower's vast machinery, an intricate assembly of gears, escapements, weights, and pendulums, had been meticulously crafted to maintain precise time, despite the challenges of weather and wear. Yet the clock's failures persisted, often without warning or obvious cause. Thomas documented each stoppage with exacting detail, noting environmental conditions, mechanical stress points, and any anomalies in the clock's operation. His inspections revealed no immediate mechanical defects that could wholly account for the sudden and intermittent halts. The gears were well oiled, the pendulum swung with steady rhythm, and the escapement operated as designed. Occasionally, minor debris or dust was found, lodged between cog teeth, but these were swiftly cleared and could not explain the clock's longer stoppages. The clock's mechanism appeared sound, yet it remained prone to inexplicable pauses. In parallel, Thomas explored the possibility that external factors influenced the clock's performance. He noted that many stoppages coincided with sudden changes in weather, storms, gusting winds, and temperature drops, conditions that might subtly affect the clock's delicate balance. Yet this correlation was imperfect. Some failures occurred on clear, calm days, deepening the mystery. Rumors began to swirl within Milford, fueled by the strange synchronicity of Samuel's cries and the clock's failures. Some townsfolk speculated that the child's vocalizations themselves might interfere with the clock's mechanism. This suggestion, though dismissed by Thomas as superstition, gained enough traction to become a topic of local debate. Could the infant's cries, carrying unusual frequencies or rhythms, physically disrupt the clock's workings? Thomas, ever the methodical craftsman, was intrigued by this idea and began designing experiments to test it. He measured the pitch and intensity of Samuel's cries during episodes, comparing them to the frequencies known to affect mechanical resonance. While he found no conclusive evidence that the cries directly caused stoppages, the notion that sound waves might impact the clock's delicate gears was not entirely dismissed. The idea of resonance, the amplification or damping of vibrations through sympathetic frequencies, was gaining scientific currency, and Thomas considered whether Samuel's cries might interact with the clock's components in such a manner. This line of thought opened a novel avenue of inquiry, bridging the domains of acoustics and mechanics in a way previously unexplored in Milford. Conversations among the town's scholars and inventors grew animated. Local inventor Josiah Carrington proposed constructing sound-dampening enclosures around the clock's mechanism to shield it from external vibrations. Meanwhile, a small group of amateurs experimented with tuning forks and other devices to replicate the infant's cry patterns, searching for clues to their potential mechanical influence. Despite these efforts, the clock's stoppages continued unpredictably, accompanied invariably by Samuel's cries. The persistence of the phenomenon challenged prevailing assumptions about cause and effect. Was the child merely sensitive to the clock's failures, Or was there a more profound connection at play? One that transcended simple mechanical explanation. Amidst this uncertainty, Thomas documented his findings in a growing compendium of notes and sketches, illustrating the clock's internal structure, alongside waveforms of Samuel's cries and timelines of each incident. His journals reveal an evolving theory that the clock and child existed within a shared system of interaction, a feedback loop in which mechanical failure and human response were entwined. This theory, though speculative, represented a departure from conventional clockmaking. Thomas began to view the clock not as an isolated machine, but as part of a living ecosystem, sensitive to forces both mechanical and intangible. The boy's cries, in this framework, were not passive reactions, but active components influencing the system's balance. The investigation attracted the attention of outside observers as well. Letters describing the strange case reached scientific circles in London, prompting inquiries from physicists and engineers intrigued by the possibility of an unknown interaction between sound and machinery. While some dismissed the story as local folklore, others saw it as an opportunity to explore the frontiers of acoustic physics and mechanical engineering. Within Milford, however, the growing interest was met with mixed feelings. Town officials, concerned about the potential disruption to commerce and public order, urged discretion and sought to manage the narrative. The clock tower was more than a timepiece. It was a symbol of the town's stability and progress. Any suggestion of malfunction or supernatural influence risked undermining confidence in Milford's industrious spirit. In response, Thomas was commissioned to conduct a formal inquiry, tasked with both repairing the clock and providing an authoritative explanation for the stoppages. His work became a public affair, with townspeople gathering near the tower during inspections, eager for news and reassurance. The pressure weighed heavily on Thomas, who balanced scientific curiosity with civic responsibility. Throughout this period, Samuel's cries remained a constant, haunting presence. Observers noted that the child's distress increased during longer stoppages, his wails rising in volume and complexity. The cries seemed to reflect not only the duration of the clock's silence, but also an emotional intensity that resonated throughout the town. Margaret Hargrove, meanwhile, continued to grapple with the impact of the phenomenon on her family. The repeated episodes strained her health and patience, as she sought ways to comfort Samuel and protect him from the growing scrutiny. Her letters express a mixture of hope and despair, revealing a mother caught between love for her son and the weight of a mystery beyond her understanding. The intersection of mechanical investigation and human experience heightened the stakes of the unfolding drama. The clock tower's failures were no longer mere technical issues, but events that touched upon the deepest fears and hopes of Milford's inhabitants. The line between machine and living being blurred as Samuel's cries echoed through the town square, a plaintive accompaniment to the silence of the great clock. Amid these complexities, Thomas's inquiry remained steadfastly empirical. He sought to isolate every variable, to test every theory, no matter how unconventional. His efforts illuminated the clock's vulnerabilities and resilience, yet failed to yield a definitive cause for the stoppages. The mystery persisted, a puzzle at the intersection of sound, mechanics, and human perception. In the quiet moments between crises, Thomas reflected on the paradox of a machine designed for perfect regularity, yet subject to unpredictable failure, synchronized with the cries of a child. His journal musings reveal a growing respect for the unknown forces shaping the world, a recognition that some mysteries defy reduction to mere mechanics. Thus, the mechanical investigation unfolded not as a straightforward repair, but as an exploration of the boundaries between human and machine, sound and silence, cause and effect. The clock tower stood as both object and symbol, its halts mirrored by the boy's cries, together weaving a narrative that challenged Milford's understanding of time, technology, and the invisible threads linking them. News of the uncanny bond between Samuel's cries and the clock tower's halts soon transcended the boundaries of Milford, drawing a diverse array of observers, scholars, inventors, and curious onlookers alike, each eager to unravel the enigma. What began as a local oddity evolved into a matter of broader scientific and public intrigue, as word spread through letters, newspapers, and whispered conversations in academic circles. Among the first to arrive was Dr. Eliza Harrow, a pioneering physicist from London, whose reputation for bold inquiry and unconventional theories preceded her. Dr. Harrow had been studying acoustic phenomena and mechanical resonance, and Samuel's case presented an extraordinary opportunity to explore the intersection of sound and machinery in a living context. Her arrival in Milford in early November was met with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Dr. Harrow approached the mystery with a blend of scientific rigor and open-minded curiosity. She conducted detailed observations of the child's cries, employing early acoustic apparatus to measure pitch, frequency, and amplitude. Her notebooks reveal meticulous records, charts mapping the boy's vocalizations against the clock's operational status, and hypotheses that challenged established notions of causality. One of Dr. Harrow's key findings was that Samuel's cries exhibited distinct rhythmic patterns that not only mirrored the clock's ticking, but in some instances anticipated the clock's stoppage by several seconds. This discovery deepened the mystery, suggesting that the cries might precede mechanical failure rather than merely follow it. The implications raised profound questions about the nature of time, perception, and the limits of human sensory experience. The local community, already captivated, now found itself at the center of a burgeoning scientific debate. Townsfolk gathered near the clock tower, not only during stoppages, but also to observe Dr. Harrow's experiments, eager to witness the unfolding inquiry. The presence of an outsider with specialized knowledge lent legitimacy to the phenomenon, while also introducing tensions between traditional beliefs and emerging scientific discourse. Dr. Harrow's theories proposed that Samuel's cries might involve sound frequencies capable of interacting with the clock's mechanism in subtle ways, possibly through mechanical resonance or sympathetic vibration. She speculated that the child's neurological sensitivity allowed him to perceive minute fluctuations in the clock's operation, prompting anticipatory vocal responses. This hypothesis bridged physiology and physics, positioning Samuel as a unique subject at the nexus of living perception and mechanical function. Her conclusions sparked interest among other scholars and inventors who visited Milford in the ensuing weeks. Discussions proliferated on the potential for sound to influence machinery, and experiments were devised to test the effects of various acoustic stimuli on clock mechanisms. These explorations would eventually contribute to emerging fields of study involving acoustics, engineering, and human perception. Yet Dr. Harrow's presence also intensified local anxieties. The boy's cries, once a private family matter, became public phenomena, heard by crowds who interpreted them through lenses of superstition and fear as much as scientific curiosity. Reports circulated of restless nights, disrupted commerce, and heightened tensions within the community. Some saw the child as a portent or curse, while others embraced the mystery as a symbol of the era's complex relationship with technology and progress. The emotional toll on the Hargrove family was palpable. Margaret expressed in her letters the strain of constant attention and the challenge of protecting Samuel's well-being amid growing crowds and scrutiny. The family's privacy was eroded, and the child's cries, once intimate signals, became public spectacles. Yet Margaret also conveyed a cautious optimism that scientific inquiry might one day illuminate the reasons behind her son's unique condition. Thomas Ellery, collaborating closely with Dr. Harrow, found his own perspectives evolving. He welcomed the rigorous analysis and fresh insights she brought, while grappling with the deeper philosophical questions the phenomenon raised. His clock-making expertise complemented her scientific approach, blending craft and theory in a partnership emblematic of the era's expanding intellectual horizons. The broader implications of the case began to resonate beyond Milford's borders. Letters from London's scientific societies debated the possibility of time perception as a sensory phenomenon, inspired in part by Samuel's cries and their relationship to mechanical failure. The event became a touchstone for discussions about the nature of time, not merely as measured hours and minutes, but as experienced and felt by living beings. Amid this ferment, the town itself grappled with the paradox of progress and uncertainty. The clock tower, a beacon of industrial modernity, was now also a symbol of fragility, its dependable chimes interrupted and echoed by a child whose very cries challenged the boundaries of human understanding. Milford's streets buzzed with speculation, from tavern debates to marketplace chatter, as the community sought to reconcile the mystery with everyday life. Local newspapers amplified the phenomenon, publishing accounts that ranged from empirical reports to sensationalized stories. Headlines such as "The Boy Who Cries to Time's Fall" and "Milford's Living Clock" captured public imagination, drawing visitors and heightening the town's profile. The case became emblematic of the era's tension between scientific advancement and lingering superstition, embodying the hopes and fears of a society in flux. As winter approached, Dr. Harrow intensified her investigations, experimenting with soundproofing and mechanical adjustments aimed at isolating variables. She sought to determine whether altering the clock's acoustic environment might influence the boy's cries or the clock's reliability. These experiments, conducted under Thomas's careful supervision, represented pioneering efforts to integrate human and mechanical systems within a scientific framework. Yet despite these advances, the core mystery remained unsolved. Samuel's cries continued to follow or precede the clock's stoppages with an eerie precision that defied explanation. The boy's vocalizations, rich with rhythm and emotion, became a living testament to the intricate interplay between human perception and the mechanical world. The growing public fascination also prompted reflection among philosophers and poets who visited Milford or read of its peculiar child. Samuel's cries were interpreted metaphorically as expressions of humanity's struggle to grasp the relentless march of time and the uncertainties embedded within progress. His condition inspired verses and essays exploring themes of time, technology, and the limits of human knowledge. Within this confluence of science, culture, and emotion, Milford found itself transformed. The clock tower remained the town's temporal center, but it was now accompanied by a child whose cries embodied the town's collective anxieties and aspirations. The mystery of the boy who cried when the clock stopped became a living narrative, weaving together the threads of human experience and mechanical precision into a story that resonated far beyond the town's borders. Thus, the fascination with Samuel's cries and their connection to the clock's failures marked a pivotal moment, not only in Milford's history, but in the evolving conversation about time, perception, and the boundaries of scientific inquiry. The boy's unique condition challenged observers to reconsider the relationship between sound and machine, between human sensitivity and industrial progress, setting the stage for deeper investigations into the mysteries that lie at the intersection of life and technology. As the weeks wore on and the autumn chill deepened into early winter, the phenomena surrounding Samuel's cries and the clock tower's intermittent halts grew in intensity and complexity, casting an ever-darkening shadow over Milford's once hopeful narrative. What had begun as a curious anomaly was increasingly perceived by townsfolk as an ominous portent, stirring a palpable emotional turmoil that rippled through families, workshops, and gathering places alike. Samuel's cries, once occasional and haunting, became more frequent and erratic during the prolonged stoppages of the clock. Witnesses described the child's wails as escalating from plaintive whimpers to piercing, urgent laments that filled the Hargrove household and spilled into the streets. The cries carried a raw intensity, marked by sudden shifts in pitch and rhythm that seemed to mirror the tension gripping the town itself. Margaret Hargrove, burdened by the constant distress of her son, noted in a letter to a sister that Samuel's cries rise like a tempest when the clock falters, as though he senses a deeper unrest beyond mere mechanism. Her words reveal a mother's anguish compounded by the community's growing unease, as the child's condition transcended personal sorrow to become a shared source of anxiety. Reports emerged of strange phenomena accompanying the clock's failures and Samuel's cries. Residents near the tower recounted sudden drops in temperature, chill gusts that swept through the square, leaving frost on windows and breath visible in the air, even on otherwise mild days. Flickering lights, unexplained shadows, and fleeting whispers were said to manifest around the clock tower during these episodes, heightening the sense of supernatural disturbance. One particularly vivid account comes from Samuel Griggs, the young apprentice, who described seeing a wavering shadow cast by the tower, moving against the wind's direction, while the boy's cries echoed like a dirge. Such sightings fueled fears that forces beyond human control were at play, intertwining the mechanical mystery with folklore of restless spirits and time's spectral guardians. The emotional strain on the community intensified as superstition took firmer hold. Taverns and marketplaces buzzed with speculative tales, some suggesting that the clock's silence and the boy's cries were curses unleashed by past transgressions, industrial accidents, broken promises, or ancient grievances buried beneath Milford's foundations. Others whispered that Samuel himself was a conduit for otherworldly forces, a child marked by destiny to warn of impending calamity. This rising tide of fear clashed with the town's industrial ambitions and growing faith in scientific explanation. While figures like Dr. Eliza Harrow and Thomas Ellery sought rational understanding through observation and experimentation, many townspeople found such approaches cold and insufficient against what they perceived as a spiritual crisis. The divide between empirical inquiry and folk belief deepened, fracturing Milford's social fabric. Margaret Hargrove's household became a focal point for both compassion and suspicion. Neighbors, caught between sympathy and fear, alternated between offering support and keeping wary distance. The family's isolation grew, compounded by the relentless attention their son attracted. Margaret's letters convey a profound loneliness, tempered by steadfast love and determination to protect Samuel from harm. Within the Hargrove home, nights were marked by episodes of intense crying, often coinciding with the longest clock stoppages. The child's distress seemed to peak in darkness, his eyes wide and unblinking as He vocalized in patterns that some described as urgent pleas or warnings. These nocturnal cries unsettled the household and nearby residents, who reported restless sleep and heightened anxiety. Compounding the family's burden, some townspeople began attributing misfortunes to the clock's halts and Samuel's cries. Illnesses, accidents, and business failures were linked superstitiously to the disruptions in timekeeping. Local clergy spoke cautiously of divine judgment or spiritual imbalance, while folk healers offered charms and rituals to shield the town from perceived malevolent influences. Despite the growing panic, Thomas Ellery and Dr. Harrow remained committed to scientific investigation. They recorded an increase in the intensity and irregularity of the boys' cries during extended stoppages, noting correlations between these vocalizations and subtle environmental changes. Their observations included measurements of temperature fluctuations and electromagnetic disturbances, though neither could establish causality. Thomas's journals reflect his growing internal conflict as he sought to reconcile the empirical data with the community's mounting fears. In one entry, he mused, "The child's cries are not mere sounds, but voices echoing in the fragile space between certainty and dread. We measure and record, yet the heart of the matter eludes grasp, slipping into shadows where superstition dwells." Meanwhile, Dr. Harrow experimented with shielding the clock's mechanism from environmental factors, aiming to reduce stoppages and thus the boys' distress. These efforts yielded limited success. Minor improvements in the clock's reliability were overshadowed by unpredictable failures. The persistence of the phenomena underscored the complexity of the interplay among machine, child, and environment. The emotional toll on Samuel was evident to all who observed him. His cries bore a weight beyond infancy, an expression of profound unease, and some speculated, a nascent awareness of forces beyond ordinary perception. Margaret's accounts describe moments when Samuel seemed to gaze into distance, as if perceiving something unseen, his cries laced with urgency and fear. The community's response oscillated between empathy and dread. Some sought solace in collective rituals, church gatherings, prayers, and communal vigils aimed at restoring order and warding off misfortune. Others withdrew, haunted by the sense that Milford was caught in an invisible snare, its fate entwined with a child's cries and the silence of its great clock. Tensions rose between the town's leaders, who feared economic disruption, and residents increasingly convinced of a supernatural crisis. Officials attempted to downplay the phenomenon, urging calm and rationality, but their reassurances were often met with skepticism. The clock tower, once a symbol of progress and stability, had become a locus of fear and uncertainty. As winter approached, the atmosphere in Milford grew heavy with foreboding. The boys' cries, the clock's failures, and the strange accompanying phenomena coalesced into a shared narrative of impending upheaval. The town found itself suspended between hope and despair, science and superstition, order and chaos. In this charged environment, the cries of a single child echoed far beyond their source, becoming a voice for a community grappling with its tenuous grasp on time, progress, and the unknown forces that shape human destiny. The mystery deepened, leaving Milford caught in the uneasy balance between the mechanical and the mystical, awaiting revelations yet to come. As the unsettling episodes surrounding Samuel's cries and the clock tower's failures intensified, Milford's authorities grew increasingly alarmed by the potential disruption to public order and the town's fragile economy. What had once been a matter of local curiosity had become a source of widespread anxiety, threatening the rhythm of daily life that the clock tower symbolized. In response, town officials moved decisively to assert control over the unfolding situation, initiating measures that would mark a turning point in the community's engagement with the mystery. The town council convened in late November, their chambers filled with voices expressing concern over the growing public spectacle. Merchants fretted over disruptions to market hours, factory owners worried about productivity losses, and civic leaders feared that rumors and superstition might incite unrest. The consensus was clear. The phenomenon surrounding Samuel and the clock tower had become a liability, requiring direct intervention. One of the council's first acts was to impose restrictions on access to Samuel and his family. The Hargroves were approached with a proposal to relocate the child to a guarded nursery within the clock tower itself, a measure framed as both protective and investigatory. While Margaret and William Hargrove were reluctant, fearing the isolation and scrutiny such confinement would entail, they were persuaded by assurances from town officials and the promise of expert care. The nursery was established in a small chamber beneath the clock's mechanism, a space modified to accommodate the child's needs while allowing continuous observation. Guards were stationed to monitor visitors and maintain security, and a rotating team of caretakers and observers was assigned to oversee Samuel's well-being. The decision, though controversial, reflected the town's desire to balance compassion with control amid growing tensions. Simultaneously, efforts were made to curtail the spread of rumors and manage public information. Town officials issued statements urging calm and emphasizing ongoing scientific investigations led by Thomas Ellery and Dr. Eliza Harrow. Newspapers were encouraged to report cautiously, avoiding sensationalism that might inflame fears. Despite these efforts, gossip persisted in taverns and marketplaces, fueled by the child's cries echoing from within the tower's confines. The guarded nursery became a focal point for both scientific inquiry and political oversight. Thomas and Dr. Harrow continued their observations under increasingly restrictive conditions, their access regulated by authorities wary of unwanted attention. The presence of guards and officials created an atmosphere of surveillance that weighed heavily on the family and researchers alike. Within these confines, Samuel's cries persisted with their characteristic intensity during clock stoppages. Observers noted that the child's distress seemed heightened by the isolation, his vocalizations growing more urgent and erratic. Margaret, allowed limited visits, described her son's behavior as increasingly fraught, as if the separation from familiar surroundings exacerbated his unease. The town's officials faced challenges in balancing the child's welfare with the demands of public order. Some council members advocated for more stringent measures, including restricting all access to the nursery and limiting information flow entirely. Others argued for greater transparency and support for the Hargrove family, emphasizing the humanitarian aspects amid the town's fears. The tension between scientific inquiry and political control became increasingly pronounced. Thomas Ellery expressed frustration in private correspondence, lamenting the constraints placed upon his work and the impact on Samuel's care. Dr. Harrow, too, voiced concerns that the atmosphere of secrecy hindered open investigation and risked alienating the community. Despite these difficulties, the investigations within the tower yielded new observations. The proximity of the child to the clock's mechanism allowed for more precise monitoring of the interplay between the infant's cries and mechanical function. Researchers documented instances where cries preceded clock halts by measurable intervals, deepening the enigma of causality and temporal perception. Public reaction to the nursery's establishment was mixed. Some townsfolk welcomed the efforts to protect Samuel and maintain order, seeing the measures as necessary for the town's stability. Others viewed the confinement as cruel, a mark of fear-driven governance that alienated the child and his family. The dichotomy reflected broader societal tensions between progress, control, and compassion. Amid this charged environment, the social fabric of Milford frayed. Families divided over beliefs about the phenomenon's nature. Was it scientific anomaly, supernatural curse, or divine message? Religious leaders weighed in cautiously, offering prayers and sermons that sought to interpret the events within spiritual frameworks, while cautioning against hysteria. Economic concerns loomed large. The clock tower's reliability was critical to the town's industries and commerce, and repeated stoppages threatened livelihoods. Factory owners pressed officials for swift resolution, fearing that the prolonged disruption would drive workers elsewhere and damage Milford's reputation as a center of industriousness. The psychological toll on the Hargrove family was profound. Margaret's letters reveal a mother torn between hope for understanding and despair over her son's isolation. The confinement, while intended as protection, became a source of emotional anguish. William Hargrove, once a steadfast presence, grew withdrawn, burdened by the weight of public scrutiny and the family's uncertain future. Within the guarded nursery, Samuel's cries took on new dimensions. Observers reported moments when the child seemed to respond to the presence of guards and caretakers, his vocalizations shifting in tone and urgency. These interactions hinted at a complex awareness, as if Samuel perceived the social dynamics constraining him as acutely as the mechanical rhythms he mirrored. The town's officials grappled with these developments, balancing humanitarian concerns with the imperative to maintain order and confidence. Discussions arose about involving higher authorities or medical experts from London, reflecting the growing seriousness of the case and its implications beyond Milford. Meanwhile, Thomas and Dr. Harrow intensified their data collection, striving to document every nuance of the phenomenon despite the constraints. Their collaboration underscored the era's tension between emerging scientific methods and the realities of political power and public perception. As winter deepened, the nursery became both a laboratory and a prison, a space where the mysteries of time, sound, and human experience converged under watchful eyes and guarded walls. The measures taken by Milford's authorities, born of fear and necessity, refracted the unfolding mystery through the prisms of control, compassion, and the quest for understanding, a complex interplay that would shape the town's fate in the months to come. On a storm-laden night in mid-December, as howling winds battered Milford and rain lashed the streets, the town awoke to a silence that was unprecedented and profound. The clock tower, which had stood as the steady heartbeat of the community for years, had ceased its chimes entirely, caught in what would become its longest and most mysterious stoppage. This prolonged silence was accompanied by an event that would send ripples through the town's consciousness and deepen the enigma surrounding Samuel and his uncanny connection to the clock. Within the guarded nursery beneath the clock tower, the usual chorus of Samuel's cries was absent. Those assigned to watch over the child reported that he was unusually still, his eyes wide yet unblinking, fixated on some unseen horizon. Then, as midnight approached, Samuel vanished without a trace. The nursery, locked and watched by guards, bore no sign of forced entry or escape. The boy had simply disappeared. The news of Samuel's disappearance spread swiftly throughout Milford, igniting a mixture of fear, confusion, and speculation. Town officials launched immediate searches, scouring the tower, surrounding streets and nearby woods, but no clues emerged. The storm's fury hampered efforts, and the community was left grappling with the twin mysteries of the silent clock and the missing child. Witnesses near the clock tower reported hearing faint cries carried on the wind in the hours following Samuel's disappearance. Cries that seemed to echo the boy's distinctive patterns, but emanated from no identifiable source. Some described the sounds as distant and ghostly, others as urgent and pleading, deepening the sense of unease that had settled over the town. Simultaneously, sporadic reports emerged from neighboring villages of infants, crying at unusual, unprompted times, their wails bearing uncanny resemblance to Samuel's distinctive vocal patterns. These accounts, though fragmented and anecdotal, suggested a phenomenon extending beyond Milford, hinting at a wider, perhaps inexplicable, connection. Thomas Ellery, devastated by Samuel's disappearance, yet driven by a relentless determination, doubled his efforts to understand the clock's failure. His investigations revealed no mechanical faults adequate to explain the unprecedented stoppage. The clock's heart had stopped, but its machinery bore no signs of damage or obstruction. This absence of physical cause deepened the mystery and suggested forces beyond mechanical failure. Dr. Eliza Harrow, too, found herself confronted by the limitations of her scientific methods. The disappearance defied empirical explanation, challenging the boundaries between observation and belief. Her notes from this period reveal a profound struggle to reconcile the tangible data with the intangible realities unfolding before her. The town's atmosphere grew charged with rumor and fear. Some whispered that Samuel's disappearance was a sacrifice or a transcendence, a passage into realms beyond mortal understanding. Others feared darker forces, abductions, curses, or the intervention of unknown powers. Religious leaders called for prayers and vigil, interpreting the events as signs of spiritual crisis. The clock tower remained silent for days, its absence of chimes a stark reminder of time's fragility and the unresolved mystery. Public gatherings formed near its base, with townsfolk seeking solace or answers, their voices blending with the lingering echoes of the boy's cries. Amid the turmoil, Thomas maintained a private conviction that Samuel's fate and the clock's mystery were intertwined. His journals reflect a belief that the boy had not merely vanished, but had become part of a larger phenomenon, one that transcended the physical and temporal constraints of Milford. The reports of infants elsewhere crying with Samuel's distinctive patterns fueled speculation about an unseen network of connection, a phenomenon perhaps linked to time itself, or to an unknown force manifesting through human voices. These echoes suggested that the mystery was not confined to a single place or moment, but was part of a continuum that challenged conventional understanding. Officials from neighboring towns and distant cities expressed interest in the case, some offering assistance, others warning of potential panic. The balance between public disclosure and containment became a pressing concern, as the phenomenon's reach seemed to expand beyond Milford's borders. Within Milford, the community grappled with loss and uncertainty. The Hargrove family's absence left a void that was felt deeply, even as the town sought to move forward. Memorials and prayers were offered, blending mourning with hope for resolution or return. The disappearance marked a profound turning point in the unfolding saga. It underscored the limits of human control over time and technology, and illuminated the fragility of the boundary between the known and the unknowable. As winter deepened, Milford found itself suspended in a liminal space, caught between past certainties and future mysteries. Thus, the longest stoppage of the clock and the vanishing of the boy who cried when it fell silent became entwined in the town's collective memory, a haunting chapter that fueled ongoing investigation, speculation, and myth. The echoes of Samuel's cries, carried on the winds of change, continued to resonate, an enduring enigma that beckoned with unanswered questions and the promise of revelations yet to emerge. In the decades that followed Samuel's disappearance and the prolonged silence of Milford's clock tower, the story of the boy who cried when the clock stopped evolved from immediate crisis into enduring legend, woven into the cultural fabric of the town and beyond. What began as a local mystery grew into a source of inspiration and reflection, influencing poets, inventors, philosophers, and the broader discourse on time, technology, and human experience. Milford itself transformed under the weight of its past. The clock tower was repaired and restored to its former mechanical glory, its chimes once again marking the rhythms of daily life. Yet the memory of its longest halt and the boy's vanishing lingered, becoming a symbol of the delicate balance between human endeavor and the unpredictable forces that shape existence. Artists and writers found in Samuel's story a rich metaphor for the uncertainties of progress. Poems circulated in local salons and literary circles, capturing the haunting image of a child's cries, echoing in the silence of machinery designed for precision. These verses pondered the nature of time, not merely as measured intervals, but as a lived experience, fraught with fragility and mystery. Inventors and engineers, inspired by the mystery, explored new frontiers in clockmaking and early electrical technologies. Advances in chronometry and mechanical resilience paralleled the town's ongoing fascination with the interplay between human perception and machine reliability. Some speculated that insights gleaned from the case influenced innovations in dampening mechanical resonance and improving timekeeping accuracy. Philosophers and early psychologists debated the implications of Samuel's cries as an expression of temporal perception. The phenomenon challenged prevailing notions of time as an external constant, suggesting instead that time might be experienced subjectively, intertwined with consciousness and emotion. These discussions laid groundwork for later explorations into the psychology of time and the nature of human awareness. Milford's collective memory preserved the tale through oral histories and commemorations. Annual gatherings honored the boy's legacy, blending remembrance with communal reflection on the town's journey through uncertainty and resilience. The clock tower itself became a site of pilgrimage, its chimes a reminder of the unity and fragility that time embodies. Beyond Milford, the story permeated wider cultural consciousness. References appeared in scientific treatises, philosophical essays, and artistic works across the British Isles. The boy who cried when the clock stopped became a symbol of humanity's complex relationship with technology, both a cautionary tale and a beacon of wonder. Scholars revisiting historical records noted curious correlations between sightings of the boy, or reports of similar cries, and significant scientific breakthroughs. These coincidences fueled speculation that the mystery might be linked to unseen influences guiding human progress, whether through inspiration, warning, or intervention. Though lacking empirical proof, such theories captivated imaginations and fostered interdisciplinary inquiry. The case also prompted debate over the boundaries between natural phenomena and the supernatural. Some maintained that Samuel's cries and disappearance were manifestations of spiritual forces or temporal anomalies beyond scientific grasp. Others argued for rational explanations rooted in emerging theories of complex systems and human cognition. This discourse reflected broader tensions of the era, as society grappled with the rapid pace of change and the limits of knowledge. Technological parallels emerged as clockmaking gave way to electrical timekeeping, and eventually to more sophisticated systems of measurement. The symbolic resonance of the Milford clock and its mysterious child endured, reminding innovators of the human dimensions underlying mechanical precision. Meanwhile, the cultural impact extended into education and philosophy, where Samuel's story was invoked to illustrate the interplay between determinism and uncertainty, order and chaos. The boy's cries became emblematic of moments when human experience transcends mechanistic explanation, inviting humility and wonder. The enduring enigma became a subject of literary reinterpretation as well. Novelists and playwrights crafted narratives exploring the psychological and metaphysical dimensions of the mystery, blending historical fact with imaginative speculation. These works contributed to the mythos, ensuring that Samuel's story remained vibrant and evolving. In the broader sweep of history, the tale of the boy who cried when the clock stopped stands as a testament to humanity's quest to understand time, not only as a measurable phenomenon, but as an intimate facet of existence. It reveals how technological progress is inseparable from human perception, emotion, and the mysteries that resist full comprehension. Milford's legacy, shaped by its encounter with the inexplicable, highlights the paradox of modernity, the simultaneous pursuit of control over nature and the recognition of forces that elude mastery. The boy's cries, once a source of fear and confusion, came to symbolize the enduring dialogue between the known and the unknown, the mechanical and the living. Thus, the story persisted, bridging centuries and disciplines, inviting each generation to reflect anew on the nature of time, the fragility of order, and the profound mysteries encoded in the human experience of the ticking clock. Over time, the tale of the boy who cried when the clock stopped transcended its immediate historical context, evolving into an enduring enigma that defied singular explanation. Diverse theories emerged, each seeking to unravel the mystery through lenses ranging from the scientific to the metaphysical, reflecting humanity's ceaseless quest to comprehend the inexplicable. One prevailing theory posited that Samuel was a temporal anomaly, an individual displaced or detached from the conventional flow of time. Proponents argued that his cries were manifestations of a disrupted temporal awareness, a sensitivity to moments when the linear progression of time faltered. This interpretation suggested that Samuel embodied a rupture in time itself, a living echo of moments when the clock's measured order broke down. Others embraced a symbolic reading, viewing the boy as an embodiment of time personified, a fragile, humanized representation of the relentless, indifferent passage of hours and minutes. In this view, Samuel's cries mark the vulnerability inherent in humanity's attempts to impose order on the ceaseless flow of existence. His presence was a poignant reminder that time, though measured and mechanized, remains ultimately beyond full human control or comprehension. More speculative theories ventured into the realm of the supernatural. Some suggested Samuel was a messenger, or warning from otherworldly forces, a harbinger tasked with alerting the town, and by extension humanity, to impending disruptions or transformations. Folklore and spiritual traditions found echoes in this interpretation, linking the boy's cries to ancestral beliefs about time's cyclical nature and the thin veil between worlds. Scientific interpretations, meanwhile, explored the possibility that Samuel's unique condition hinted at undiscovered aspects of human perception and neurological function. The boy's apparent anticipation of clock stoppages suggested a cognitive attunement to subtle environmental cues or temporal irregularities imperceptible to others. This line of thought anticipated later developments in chronobiology and sensory neuroscience, where time perception is understood as a complex, subjective experience. Philosophers engaged with the mystery as a metaphor for the human condition, caught between the desire for certainty and the reality of uncertainty. Samuel's cries symbolized the tension between measured time and lived time, between the external structures society imposes and the internal rhythms of consciousness. The enigma invited reflection on how humans negotiate meaning amid the inexorable march of time. Cultural memory preserved the story as a cautionary tale and a source of wonder. It became emblematic of industrial progress's double-edged nature, technological advancement coupled with the recognition of forces beyond human mastery. Samuel's cries echoed as a subtle warning against hubris, urging humility in the face of the unknown. The case also inspired scientific inquiry into complex systems theory, where small perturbations can precipitate large-scale effects, and where feedback loops blur lines between cause and effect. Samuel's cries and the clock's failures exemplified such dynamics, illustrating how human and mechanical systems might be intertwined in unexpected ways. Historically, the boy's story influenced approaches to timekeeping and the design of resilient mechanical systems, informing innovations aimed at mitigating vulnerabilities revealed by the clock's stoppages. Engineers and inventors regarded the phenomenon as a prompt to consider the human element within technological frameworks. Theories of time travel and alternate realities found fertile ground in popular imagination, with Samuel imagined as a traveler between dimensions or epochs, his cries a bridge linking disparate temporal planes. While lacking empirical support, such narratives enriched the mythos and underscored the story's capacity to inspire speculation beyond conventional boundaries. Ultimately, the boy who cried when the clock stopped remains a profound question, a convergence of history, science, philosophy, and myth. His story challenges simplistic notions of time as a fixed, objective phenomenon, inviting ongoing dialogue about the interplay between human perception, technology, and the mysteries that persist at their intersection. The echoes of Samuel's cries continue to resonate in cultural memory, a haunting refrain that transcends eras and disciplines. His presence lingers as a symbol of the fragile, elusive nature of time and humanity's perpetual endeavor to understand and coexist with it. In this light, the mystery endures not as a problem to be solved, but as an invitation to embrace uncertainty, to recognize that some forces shaping human experience remain beyond full grasp, woven into the fabric of existence, like the silent beats between the clock's relentless ticking.